Welcome to the Week 2 PowerPoint. I listened to my PowerPoint presentation for Week 1 and I felt like my pace was a little bit too slow. So I'm going to speed it up with this PowerPoint narration, and if it's too fast, just let me know. All right, we're going to look at the historical foundations of curriculum. First is the colonial period. During this period in American education, there were three geographical regions: New England, the Middle Atlantic colonies, and the South. Town schools were prominent during this period in the New England colonies. These were elementary schools that were controlled by local communities, and the focus was on biblical instruction, reading, writing, and arithmetic. The national period. Most children grew up on a farm or in small towns and expected their adult lives to be much like that of their parents. People of the time believed they could make a better society and were eager to try out new ideas. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson were two influential political leaders of the time. Change occurred more quickly in the cities. Their population was more diverse, and people freely shared and discussed new ideas. Therefore, educational changes began in the cities and eventually spread to rural areas. By the 1750s, literacy rates, the percentage of people who could basically read and write, were the highest in the New England colonies at about 75% for males and 65% for females. The literary rates, however, were lower in the middle and southern colonies. During the American early national period, teachers continued to be positive models of good citizenship for their students. They were expected to be involved, making the community a better place through both church participation and involvement in community issues. 19th century European educators. Pestalozzi. His commitment to social justice, interest in everyday forms, and the innovations he made in schooling practice make Pestalozzi a fascinating focus of study. Instead of dealing with words, he argued, children should learn through activity and through objects. They should be free to pursue their own interests and draw their own conclusions. Froebel, the kindergarten movement. Froebel established the very first kindergarten program in Germany in 1837. Froebel's views on education centered on the importance of play, games, and toys in the intellectual, spiritual, and social development of children, as inspired partly by his study of Comenius. Eventually, he developed a philosophy and program of education for children aged 4 to 6 that was meant to serve as a transition period between home and school, infancy and childhood. Since his philosophy was to nurture and protect children, shielding them from outside influence such as plants might be nurtured and sheltered in a garden, it was natural to call his school Kindergarten, or literally children's garden. To this day, programs for 5 and some 6-year-olds are called kindergarten. Like his predecessors, Froebel believed children were social creatures, and learning was the most natural and efficient through activity and play, was an essential part of learning. He believed that teaching methods between a younger and older child ought to be vastly different, and wished for children to have the chance to explore their positive whims. Herbart. It was Herbart's structuring of a scientific model of education in which development of internal character was the priority, and the acquisition of knowledge and skills. The activity of teaching that is used to achieve that goal was subordinate. That was innovative. Herbart also drew a clear connection between the development of individual character through education and the resulting benefits to society, or the emergence of productive citizens. Spencer. Spencer's method is, broadly speaking, scientific and empirical. Because of the empirical character of scientific knowledge and because of his conviction that which is known, biological life, is in a process of evolution, Spencer held that knowledge is subject to change. The rise of universal education. Monitorial schools, also called Lancasterian schools, is a teaching method practiced most extensively in the 19th century, in which the older or better scholars taught the younger or weaker pupils. In the system, as promoted by the English educator Joseph Lancaster, the superior students learned their lessons from the adult teacher in charge of the school and then transmitted their knowledge to the younger or less informed students. Common schools. Horace Mann, the father of the common school movement, was the foremost proponent of education reform in antebellum America. An ardent member of the Whig Party, Mann argued that the common school, a free, universal, non-sectarian, and public institution, was the best means of achieving the moral and socioeconomic uplift of all Americans. Well, elementary schools were traditionally kindergarten through grade 6, secondary schools grades 7 through 12, academies. This is a place of study or training in a special field. High schools could be grades 9 through 12, where junior high school is 7 and 8. In the transitional period, there was a reaffirming of the traditional curriculum. Specifically, Harris and Eliot were two conservative reformers who were early defenders of the traditional academic curriculum. There was an emergence of vocational education, where a typical high school program where students went to learn a trade or skill, such as becoming an electrician or a plumber. And there continued to be a pressure for a more modern curriculum. The birth of the field of curriculum. Bobbitt and Charters, behaviorism and scientific principles. They believed in applying science to education. Bobbitt believed that the learning objectives, together with the activities, should be grouped and sequenced after clarifying the instructional activities and tasks. He also views curriculum as a science that emphasizes the needs of the students. This viewpoint explains why lessons are planned and organized depending on the needs of the students, and these needs must be addressed by teachers to prepare them for adult life. Chartiers, aside from emphasizing the students' needs, he believed that the objectives, along with the corresponding activities, should be aligned with the subject matter or content. For that reason, department chairpersons or course coordinators scrutinize the alignment or matching of objectives and subject matter prepared by the faculty members. Kilpatrick, the progressive influence. Kilpatrick developed the project method for early childhood education, which was a form of progressive education that organized curriculum and classroom activities around a subject's central theme. He believed that the role of a teacher should be that of a guide, as opposed to an authoritative figure. There's a saying that says a teacher should be a guide on the side, facilitating instruction, rather than a sage on the stage, which constitutes lecturing and very little student activity. Kilpatrick believed that children should direct their own learning according to their interests and should be allowed to explore their environment, experiencing their learning through the natural senses. Proponents of progressive education and the project method reject traditional schooling that focuses on memorization, rote learning, strictly organized classrooms, meaning desks in rows with the students always seated, and typical forms of assessment. He has been described as a developmentalist. The 26th yearbook was published by the National Society for the Study of Education in 1927, and it was the first such yearbook that was devoted entirely to curriculum. Rugg and Caswell, the development period. Harold Rugg introduced the concept of the development of the whole child, the inclusion of social studies, and the importance of curriculum planning in advance. Caswell believes that subject matter is developed around the interests of the learners and their social functions. So the curriculum is a set of experiences. Learners must experience what they learn. The 8-year study, also known as the 30-school study, was an experimental project conducted between 1930 to 1942 by the Progressive Education Association, in which 30 high schools redesigned their curriculum while initiating innovative practices in student testing, program assessment, student guidance, curriculum design, and staff development. In 1949, a small book had a big impact on education. In just over 100 pages, Ralph W. Tyler presented the concept that curriculum should be dynamic, a program under constant evaluation and revision. Goodlad, School Reform. The acknowledged leader of educational renewal, John Goodlad has been at the vortex of every wind that has blown across education since World War II, holding firm to the basic ideas of humanism and progressivism. From the 1970s, when he took a stand against the behavioral objectives movement, to the early 1900s, when he opposed America 2000, Goodlad has steadfastly adhered to the wisdom of Alfred North Whitehead and John Dewey. Pinar, Reconceptualizing Curriculum Theory. The aim of the Reconceptualist movement was to understand, not just implement or evaluate the curriculum. Freire, From Banking Concepts of Education to Problem Posing. He felt that, he developed the pedagogy of the oppressed, meaning he went to Brazil and taught very poor, uneducated people basic skills so they could be successful in life. Freire calls traditional pedagogy the banking model because it treats the student as an empty vessel to be filled with knowledge, like a piggy bank. However, he argues for pedagogy to treat the learner as a co-creator of knowledge. The psychological foundations of curriculum. The first one is behaviorism, and we touched on this approach to curriculum and learning in our Week 1 PowerPoint. And I feel the text does an excellent job of discussing the bulleted items under behaviorism. I feel the text does an equally exemplary job in discussing cognitive psychology, such as the bulleted points on this slide. However, I would like you to pay particular attention to Piaget, Bloom, as in Bloom's taxonomy, Vygotsky, constructivism, and Maslow. The concepts under cognitive psychology are some of the most important in education, and particularly curriculum. It's particularly important that you understand all of these policies and remember them throughout your doctoral program. As we reach the last slide in this narrated PowerPoint presentation, I would like to ask a couple of questions of you. Which of the content in the cognitive psychology slides do you find most enlightening? How will you use this content in the development of curriculum? Please consider and reflect upon these questions in the week ahead. Thank you.